Hey everyone. In this video, I'll show you how you can create your own tile set and get it working in Godot. This works well for the Threadbare StoryQuests or really any game project. And even if you already have a tile set image or a sprite sheet that you want to use, the second half of this video will still help show you how to incorporate that image into your game. So we'll draw a basic tile set in Piskel, which is a free online drawing tool. Then we'll import it into Godot and set up physics layers and terrains. Terrains will help the game engine smartly connect your different tiles so that you can build areas much faster. As we get started here, one thing to consider, if you're working on an existing game, it can be useful to check what tile size is already being used so that you can match it if you want to. This can help keep things looking consistent in both scale and style. One way I can find the tile size in the game is to open any scene that has a tile map layer node in it. So I'll choose the intro scene that's part of the template folder I copied from my story quest. And if I look in the scene tree, I can click on any tile map layer node. And in the inspector, I can see a tile set resource listed. If I click on that resource, it'll open and show me that the tile size for this is actually 64 by 64 pixels. So for this video, we'll use 64 by 64 to match the game, but you can use any size for your own projects. Okay, so let's create a basic grass tile set. First, let's go to piskelapp.com and we'll click Create Sprite. I'm going to keep this pretty simple since I'm definitely a beginner when it comes to art, but I can show you a few techniques that made a big difference for me. First, I'm going to resize the canvas so that it matches the artwork we found in the game. So I'll click the Resize button on the right-hand side of the screen, and then I'll just set my width and height to be 64 by 64. Before we start drawing, let's make sure we enable Tile Mode. On the right-hand side, there's a button that says Preferences. If you click on that, you can see one of the options is Tile Mode. If you enable this, what it does is shows you a 3x3 preview of how your tile that you're drawing now will look when it's repeated across your level or over a bigger space. And seeing the pattern repeated like this over a larger area can help prevent you from creating obvious seams or patterns that just look a little strange when tiled. And to start my tile, I'm just going to apply a dark green across the entire tile using the paint bucket tool. The other thing I did to keep things simple was make my brush size a bit bigger here so that I wasn't doing tiny detailed work. And when I drew shapes and dots for textures, one important thing I tried to do was draw some of the shapes so that they go halfway off the edge of a tile, and then draw the other half of that same shape or show it connecting to the opposite edge. Hopefully, this will help make my tiles connect a little bit more seamlessly when they're placed next to one another in a larger area. This slight overlapping is a common and useful technique for creating tile sets. You can see how the tile mode preview shows us exactly how this will look when repeated. No harsh lines or obvious seams where the tiles meet. Another quick tip here would be to try and avoid placing dots or shapes in straight lines across your tile. Try and scatter them randomly so that the pattern looks more natural when it's repeated. Okay, once you're happy with your base tile, we'll need to turn on the grid feature to help us organize everything. So in those same preferences on the right-hand side that we used before, you'll select the word grid from the choices across the top and then hit Enable Grid. Set the grid size to 1 pixel and the grid spacing to 64. What this will do is create guidelines for a layout of our tile set. In order to actually see and benefit from the grid being on, we need to have a canvas that's bigger than just this one tile. So let's go ahead and resize the canvas so that it's 3 by 3 of this tile. That would be a total of 192 by 192 pixels. So now we can take our original tile and we can actually copy and paste it to all the positions in this new canvas using the rectangular selection tool. The process of using this tool and copying and pasting can be a little confusing at first, but in this case, I'm clicking on the rectangular selection tool, clicking on and dragging across an area that I want to highlight with my mouse, then pressing Control C or Command C to copy it. And then the next thing I do is click and drag that copied shape to a new area. And once I have it exactly where I want, I hit Control V or Command V to paste it. Okay, now let's try and make this look a little bit better. Those outer tiles in our 3x3 grid, let's add thin borders to them using a slightly darker shade of the same green we used for the tiles. This will help create a cleaner separation when your tile area ends and some other tile or something else in your game begins. And it's just nice to have edge tiles like this as options, which is part of the reason we're creating a larger canvas here, is to give us more varied forms of these tiles. And the next thing I'm going to do here is resize the canvas one more time so that it's no longer 192 by 192, but instead I'll go 256 by 256. This just gives us another row along the bottom and another column on the right-hand side. I'm expanding the canvas a little bit more so we can give ourselves a few more options for this basic tile set, and then we'll stop there. But hopefully you can see in how I'm doing this, how you could create any number of variations of your tiles. And using just the resizing of the canvas and keeping the grid option on, you can place or copy and paste different tiles around on your tile set so that when you export, you have all the different options that you want for your game. You have a number of different options once you're finished with your tile set for how you want to save this. You can click the save icon and it'll allow you to rename the title of your file, and you can save it offline as a Piskel file. The other option is to select export, and under here you have a number of different file types and ways you can save or export this file. I'm going to choose PNG, and then I'm going to click the download button underneath Sprite Sheet File Export. I'll use this to import it into Godot. And if I'm working with a team and I'm using Git, I'm going to open Git Bash right now, and I'm going to navigate to the folder that has my game using the CD or change directory command. Once there, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that my local main repository is up to date with any changes from my team's GitHub repository online. So I'll do git pull. Once I'm sure that my main repository is up to date, I'm going to use git switch -c to create a brand new branch that I'm going to use to add my new tile set to our game project and then push it to my teammates online. Okay, but first let's open up Godot, and I'm going to go to the file system and navigate to my StoryQuest folder. And I'm going to right-click this folder and create a new folder called My Tiles that I'll drop my tile set into. And let's set this up in a blank scene in Godot so that you can experiment with physics layers and terrains without any distractions or any risk of breaking anything else in any existing scene. In this blank scene, I'll start with just a basic node 2D as the parent node, and then I'll hit add node again, and as a child node of that, I'm going to add a single tile map layer. If I click on this tile map layer node, I can look over in the inspector and see that it has a blank space for the property of tileset. This is where I want to click and create new tileset. And staying right here in the inspector, I can see that the tile size default is 16 by 16, so I want to change that now to be 64 by 64 before I start to introduce my new image of the tile set I made. Now that that's set, I can focus my attention on the bottom of the screen where there's a new tile set and tile map panel that's open to me. With tile set selected and looking at the file system, what I want to do is drag and drop my new tile set image into this space on the left-hand side of the panel. At this point, you'll get a pop-up where Godot is offering to take your image and turn it into a set of individual tiles. If you've chosen the correct size in the inspector already, Godot will do this in a way that looks exactly like the tile set you had created. So at this point, you've already got the basics of a working tile set in Godot. You could add a tile map layer of your own and add it to any scene and start using these tiles right now. But depending on your game design, you might have some needs for boundaries around some of the tiles so that, for example, the player can't pass through them. So with our tile map layer and our experimental scene still selected, let's explore physics layers. In the inspector, I can see a property called physics layers underneath the tile set. By clicking on this, I get a drop-down that asks me if I want to add an element. I'm going to click this and add our first physics layer to this tile set. Now, back down in the Tileset panel, I'm going to select this Paint button. This is a button that allows you to paint different kinds of properties onto different tiles within your tile set. We'll come back to it later for terrains as well. For now, though, I'm going to click Select a Property Editor, and I'm going to select Physics Layer 0 that we just made in the inspector. Here we get this small little canvas where we can choose how we want to shape a physics or collision layer on any individual tile. So whatever I set up here in this little canvas, I can then use by clicking on a tile in the tile set to the right, and it will apply this physics layer to that tile. And you have three tools just above the painting canvas that allow you to add, move, or delete any of these little points to reshape or redesign your collision shapes for your tiles. Now that we've added some physics layers to some of our tiles, let's talk about how collisions work in games in Godot. As the game gets bigger, you might want to control which objects interact with which. Maybe the player hits walls but enemies don't, or projectiles hit enemies but pass through pickups or collectibles. So what I'm going to do is drag a player into our test scene to show how this works. I just searched for player.tscn. So when I click on the player, you'll see in the inspector that it has collision layers and masks. The collision layer is basically what layer of the game does the player exist on, and the collision mask is what layer or layers of the game can the player see or interact with. This can be tricky at first, but this is the basic idea. So if our tile map isn't on one of the layers that the player's mask is looking for, then the player will pass right through our boundaries even though we did draw physics layers on some of our tiles. The player in this scene is actually looking at collision mask layers 1, 2, and 5 here. So I have the tile map on collision layer 1, so the player should be able to see it and be stopped by our boundaries. Let's test it. And I'll have to quickly save the scene as a test scene so that I can run it. And as I try to move the player through the top wall or the corner here, I can tell that it can see the tile boundaries because it's unable to pass through. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is how to create terrain sets for your tile set. This will make painting areas much faster because the engine will automatically choose the right tiles for you. So with the tile map layer selected, go to Terrain Sets and click on Add Element. Under Mode, choose Matching Sides. And then under Terrains, click Add Element again. I'll rename this terrain set to Grass and change the color to dark green. Now go back to the Tileset panel at the bottom of your screen and click that Paint button again, but this time we're going to switch the property from physics layers to terrains. Then select the one terrain set we created. Then I need to tell the engine which tiles I want to include in this set. So I'm going to click on all the tiles in our tile set actually. Then within this terrain set, I need to select the grass terrain that we created in the inspector as well. Then I need to teach the engine how these tiles connect by clicking the center of each tile, then clicking on the sides that should connect to other tiles. As an example, the first two tiles here, we are teaching the engine to connect this side of this tile with this side of this tile. Notice I'm not connecting the fully bordered tile to anything. That one is meant to be used alone. So once that's set up, click on the Tile Map tab, select the Terrain brush, choose Grass, and start painting. The engine should now automatically pick the right border tiles and corners for whatever shape you draw. No more manually placing each tile. If you want to reuse this, you can right-click on the tile set in the inspector of our test scene. You can hit Save As, and you can see here that it's being saved as a resource file. I'll save that to my tiles as well, and now any new scene I make, or any existing scene, if it has a tile map layer, I can go to the tile set, select Quick Load, and then load in my new tile set resource. Now it'll have all the different terrain connections that I made and any physics layers that I've added. Okay, now that you're done working on your tile set, if you were working as a team and using GitHub, you're going to want to save these changes to your local Git repository and then get them online. So let's open up Git on our computer. Let's navigate to our project folder and make sure I'm on the right branch, my feature branch for adding this tile set. My Git application shows me that I'm on the right branch, but you can also just type the git space branch command to check on this. Then I'm going to type git status to see what I've changed in the project. It's showing a test scene and changes to my tiles folder where I added these tile set files. The test scene was just for experimenting, so I'm not going to add that to this commit. I'll type git add and then the path to my tiles folder. Then I'll save this change using a git commit -m, and that will allow me to write a simple message along with this git command. Finally, I'm going to push this to the GitHub repository online using git push set upstream origin and followed by the name of this feature branch. And then I'll head over to GitHub to the main page of the repo. And I can see that GitHub has noticed that there's been a change to the repository, and it's asking me if I want to compare these changes on this feature branch to the main branch. So I'm going to click compare and pull request. And then I'm just going to add a little bit more of a description here on GitHub for my teammates. When I'm done, I'll click create pull request. Okay, that's it. You now have all the basics to keep experimenting and creating. Learning this workflow, the file types, the implementation steps, and the overall pattern will help you whether you use different art tools or work on Threadbare or your own projects in the future. Now it's just a matter of iterating and trying new creative ideas.